Dudes, what is happening? It's Trent here with some Megaman Legends redesign in Sketchbook Pro. So a couple of weeks back, I went through a period of time when I was saying, I'm not going to play video games for like 2 weeks. And so I started watching. Somebody else play video games on YouTube while I work. It was a good productive time. I started watching Kyle Bossman. He's with the Easy Allies. I'm going to leave a link to those dudes down in the text field below the video because I watch them all the time. You guys should check it out if you're into video games. But Kyle Bossman, funny dude. He usually does a show called Dumb Game Monday, but now he's playing Mega Man Legends. And so he switched it up. It's Fun Game Monday, and he's having a great time. I had never really played these games back in the day. I recently got back into them because of his show. I was mostly just watching him play, and got me, kind of worked up to do a little bit of a redesign. That's what I do. I do a lot of concept art redesigns of classic and cool stuff from the past. I've actually kind of made a career out of it. I'm no stranger to redesigning classic stuff, and sometimes I'm doing my own thing too, but it's always fun to dig into something that I loved before, really analyze why I liked it, what I liked about it, and see if I can kind of bring something new and inventive to it. And sometimes you just want to do these little thumbnails to try to figure out what was it that I really liked. What is defining the character of Mega Man in the Mega Man Legends series? And so I kind of started to add and then push and pull things out, and I wanted to try adding a little bit of something more modern to it. So I didn't really want to do the big, huge, clod-hopping 90s style feat like the original Mega Man had, but you'll see it later on. I started to find out that that's really sort of what makes him so iconic, iconically Mega Man. And this is just one sheet. If I were doing this as a profession, if I were hired by Capcom, and I used to work for them for a period of time, and one thing that I know is that they don't like to change their characters too dramatically, but you still have to do these sheet after sheet of designs trying something new. Which parts are iconically and quintessentially Mega Man? What do you need to keep and what can you innovate on? Which parts can you modernize and change up? Is it the proportions? Is it the length of the legs? Is it the thickness of some of the elements? Is it the bolts? How simple can it be? But how much can you add to it? Because I think there was a Bomberman remake back in early 2000s, and they tried to modernize it for the early 2000s, but it ended up just looking like something else. It wasn't Bomberman anymore. And so I think there was a lot of backlash from the community. It's sort of like if you were trying to make a remake of Symphony of the Night, but you went all completely 3D with it. You can't really do that. You got to keep true to what it was that made it original. It's cool to do a spin-off of something. I mean, Mega Man Legends itself was kind of a dramatic departure from what the original Mega Man was. But they brought enough originality to it to really make something special. And they kept what really made it Mega Man essentially from the beginning, which was a lot of the power-ups. And I loved the progression in Legends. I think that was really what drew me to it. The progression and also the combination of what is essentially pixel art mixed with a lot of the new 3D technology that was happening at the time. Now, it doesn't really. Some people would argue whether or not it holds up. I mean, it's PlayStation 1 era, and as you know, if you watch my channel, you know that I love that kind of a look from the old Vagrant story. And I had recently played a little bit of Metal Gear Solid on my channel, and just really loving that old kind of pixel art. Worked into very simple polygon 3D work. And realistically, if you were going to do a Mega Man Legends 3, which I think it was canceled, I don't want to dig in too much to that sorrowful story that occurred with that. But I know that there were some samples that were made, some test 3D work, and what they did was really just cell shaded, real-time cell shaded kind of a rendering style. And they didn't keep a lot of the pixel art, but I think they did a good job of modernizing it. It would be very interesting to see how that would have evolved. I think it's not that far off from some of the things that were done with Wind Waker, actually. But I think that there's a kind of a blend that you'd have to have of some of the big square kind of shapes in the patterns, in the texture work, to keep a kind of a pixel look, but really keep it sleek and clean, because people really don't want to see those pixels or the jagged lines from the perspective, because I think that old PS1 era couldn't even really handle 3D in perspective very well at all. When I was laying this out, this would be pretty much the same process that I would do if I were, say I were actually hired to do this job and redesign Mega Man for the Legends 3 or for something in that style. This would be the way I would approach it. Now, when I'm doing a design like this, one of the things I do though is I don't hold back. I just kind of do a lineup of as many different quick ideas as I can. It's sort of like if you were in a comedy writing class, no idea is a bad idea. Nothing is too stupid to say out loud. And that's true with production art and concept art. So I was doing all these flat kind of straight on shots to get the idea down as quickly as I can using the symmetry tool in Sketchbook Pro. And once I've sort of deciphered the code of, well, this is distinctly Mega Man and this other thing is distinctly to Pacific Rim or something like that, I've shown my rough sketches to a couple of people and I got some feedback. Maybe the art director steps in and he says, we like this one, but not that one. And that's when you start to explore the character in, more interesting poses and something a little bit more dynamic. Some concept artists jump right into doing this shot, and these are the more glitz and glam kind of shots. These are the shots that sell the idea, something dynamic and angular. But I wasn't entirely sold. I wasn't 100% like, oh, sure, this is where I'm going exactly here. I wanted to do something that still felt like it's got enough information for the model sheet. It's not exactly any of the ones from up above, although I just kind of picked and chose exactly the ones that I wanted for this shot. And I liked how Mega Man looked like kind of like a human boy wearing sort of a cyborg body. And that's what I wanted to emphasize. That's what I wanted to run with. I wanted to push the proportions a little bit, keep it very stylized. I did try super angular ninja feet, and it just didn't work. So I fattened them up again. I went back to the sort of Transformers kind of feet. I already know there's going to be people who are going to look at this and go, that's not Mega Man. And I got you, man. I got you. I understand. It's not. This is something different. This is like if I were exploring something new, and this would just be one out of like 30 sheets full of ideas. When I was working on League of Legends, you wouldn't believe how many iterations we did for the red buff, blue buff, all these guys. And that gives me an opportunity to explain a little bit of what you could expect. If you were a concept artist working on a project, you would be expected to do a sheet about like what you're seeing me do here every single day, if not more. In some cases, you're expected to do, twice this much work, depending on how many meetings you have or that sort of a thing. And then you would present them to a group. It really depends on which studio. At Blizzard, you just answer to a singular art director or a lead artist. And at Riot, you would answer to a group of people. So you'd sit down in a room full of about 30 people, and different people, some people would say, hey, I think you should try maybe a different color. I don't like the helmet. Maybe I try a different kind of a helmet. Meanwhile, somebody else is saying, hey, I want to do my own take on it too. So you're kind of competing with their ideas, but you're also playing off of their ideas, because ultimately it's not about you getting your way. It's about what the player wants and the final product. And you got to kind of try to please everybody in that room, which is very, some artists really handled those types of situations differently. Capcom, for example, when I was working at Capcom on Final Fight Streetwise, I had a chance to reinvent some of the characters. So I redesigned some like Cammy and Hagar and stuff like that. They really just wanted it to be what it was. So that would actually go back to Japan and be approved by Inafune or somebody else who was in charge of handling the approvals for the likeness of characters. And usually with Japanese companies, they're very specific about how their characters look, specifically Capcom. So that's why you'll notice that a lot of the characters, specifically in like the Final Fight Streetwise game that I had worked on, they didn't look all that different from how they looked in the Street Fighter series or in previous iterations of the Final Fight games. Nintendo is notorious for this sort of a thing. When they were doing the Donkey Kong stuff, for instance, like those guys couldn't change anything at all. It had to look exactly like he used to. Okay, so we've got a cool shot that we kind of like the sketch for. The line art is coming together for this dude. I wanted to give him a big, massive, overly powerful arm that just looks like you can modify the heck out of this thing. Cool Transformers legs. And so I created a new layer and I do the multiply thing. If you're interested in learning how I colorize line art, I cover this kind of thing, a lot of the more technical things in a lot of my other videos that are more specific. So I want to encourage you to go and check those out. But in short, it's basically I'm using a multiply layer or a colorize layer, and then I'll do something on top of that to create the details. So you've basically, you got about like 5 layers. Most of the time I'm working with about 5 different layers. And this is a little bit of a different process because I wanted it to feel cartoony. So you're getting a lot of this almost kind of anime style coloring going on. But I didn't really do that too much. I tend to go in and render a little bit more probably than I should. And so it's not like a science. I'm always sort of reinventing and trying to find new ways to do things. A couple of interesting things happen at this point in the design and the painting, where I began to realize. I mean, this is a conceptual design. If this were production, it's like, well, I want to show some alternate arms, some different kind of attachments that he might have. Megaman Legends was all about upgrading your arm and upgrading your armor and your gear, all of the different drill arm and things like that. And now this would be the part where, probably I'd be speaking a lot with the game designer to try to find out, well, what kind of weapons and abilities do you have planned? Because if he gets like rocket feet or something like that, then I'm going to need to kind of make a modification or add another part to my concept so that the modeler will have the information to build it. And then when the game designer gets it, he's like, oh, okay, so these are the rocket feet that I just need to switch on when that happens. And if those have an animation, I used to go so far as to actually like sketch out animations, especially with mechanical design. If you have something that unfolds or opens up, then it looks more functional, and the animators can understand it too. So at this point also, I realized I wanted him to have a little bit more of the helmet look too. So I looked up some of the reference, some of the other concept art for Mega Man Legends 2 and 3, and I realized it was a lot of his helmets were really kind of based on medieval or even possibly Greek helmets. So pretty easy fix. I did a version like that, but kept it techie, simple techie, kind of Mega Man Legends style techie. And there you have it. That's pretty much, yeah, that's how you'd handle like a character design sheet, for something like a Mega Man Legends sort of a thing in Sketchbook Pro. So he turned out okay. I'm pretty happy with some of the explorations. I think that if I were working on this, I'd probably want to do several sheets to explore a few more different ideas, some different arms, and really dig into some of the abilities that the character might have, that sort of a thing. I want to take a brief moment to thank Sketchbook Pro for sponsoring these videos. I hope that they are both entertaining and informative for you. If you are hardcore and you would like to learn more about how I draw in Sketchbook Pro, I have a lot of free tutorials on my YouTube channel, and I also sell elite boxes of tutorials for the more super hardcore. If you're more advanced, those are really for you. That's it for me, and dudes, remember, if you're gonna draw a Mega Man Legends 3 redesign, draw a Mega Man Legends 3 design with some freaking passion, man. Yeah!